The KSI versus Joe Fournier full card is here. We now know all the fights that are going to be taking place on this card. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down and giving my predictions on this full card, starting with the Happy Punch prelims. I'm going to be focusing on the main card, so I'm going to be going through these a little bit quicker. But for the first fight of the night, it is Zuckles versus a mystery opponent. We don't know much about who this mystery opponent may be, but Keemstar has confirmed that the Misfits audience is familiar with this opponent. So with that being said, and considering Zuckles has only probably had a couple of months of training, I'm gonna be picking the mystery opponent because they've probably had more experience and have probably been in the ring considering that we know them. So I'm gonna take the mystery opponent here via a decision win. And then next up we have Nestor versus Callum King. This fight was originally going to be Nestor versus Archie King, but Archie King failed his medicals and had to pull out of the event, and in came his brother Callum to take his place. And this was on only a couple of days of notice, so I don't really know what Callum King's boxing training would be. I don't know if he's had any boxing camp whatsoever, so him getting into the ring in this event is going to be interesting, and I'm going to have to take Nestor probably by a stoppage victory. And then next up we have Corn versus Unbaer. And in this one we have Corn, who is very popular on social media, who has been training for a couple of months now as he was prepared to fight OVO Breezy, who wasn't able to get on the card, as well as face Jasper, who was also talked about being Corn's next opponent. But with a couple of weeks notice, in came Unbaer. Credit to him, he's been doing a lot of promotion for this fight and has definitely been getting people interested in this matchup. But regardless, I think Corn's going to take this, as he did have a full training camp. He's been training for a couple different opponents, and it seems like he's been taking this seriously, so I'm going to go with Corn via a stoppage victory. And then for the main event of the Happy Punch prelims, it is Wings of Redemption versus Boogie 2988. The heaviest boxing match of all time, topping Thor Bjornsson versus Eddie Hall. And this is just going to be a huge spectacle, quite literally, with these guys getting into the ring. And they've both had a similar amount of time to train, a couple of months. But Wings of Redemption seems to have the attributes over Boogie. He's like 15 years younger, is quite taller than him as well, and they are around the same weight. We do know that these are only 1.5 minute rounds with 3 rounds, and I definitely see both guys gassing. So I'm going to say the one with the better engine will be Wings of Redemption, who will be able to get the stoppage victory over Boogie 2988. And then moving on to the main card for Misfits 007. The first fight is Lil Bellsy versus Lil Kymchii. And this is an interesting female fight. There was a bit of an altercation at the open workouts as well as the press conference. Lil Kymchii was really heated during the press conferences. She seemed to be really riled up and kind of emotional, which could be to her detriment in this fight. Lil Bellsy seems to have been taking her training seriously, and in the open workout she looked pretty good. She trains with coach Anthony Chill Wilson in the Kumani Club in Dubai, who is a good coach, and I do think she does have a little bit of an edge in this fight. It's hard to predict because I'm really only going off of the open workout footage that I've seen. But yeah, this is definitely going to be an interesting one, but I'm going to be picking Lil Bellsy via a stoppage in this fight. And then next up on the card is Tennessee Thresh versus Paigey Cakey. I wasn't too familiar with them coming into this card, but it looks like they have a big beef and a rivalry where they were going back and forth across various social media platforms, and it looks like they'll be settling that in the squared circle on this card. They both look decent in their open workouts. Tennessee Thresh showing more boxing footage and Paigey Cakey just showing more conditioning. Paigey trains at the London Shoot Fighters, which is the same gym as KSI. In the open workout, she was training with Magic Norby, who is a Bellator prospect, and I assume her fitness is going to be on point for this fight. And Tennessee showed more boxing footage. She has quick hands, but her technique isn't really fully there, which I mean is okay, as when a lot of these fighters do get in the ring, they lose a lot of their technique and it just becomes an all-out war. Especially in female influencer boxing, we've seen that quite a lot. So I think the more conditioned fighter will come out on top. So even though I didn't really get to see any Paigey Cakey boxing footage, I'm going to pick her to win by a stoppage in this fight. Next up on the card is DK Money versus Viruzz. Viruzz is a big name Spanish YouTuber, and he kind of brings in a different audience to the scene. Kind of similar to Whindersson Nunes, who fought on the Kingpin tournament, but obviously not to that scale. He fought on a couple of other Spanish cards where he fought with headgear. And while this is Viruzz's 3rd fight, this is DK Money's 4th fight, having fought Nick Ireland, Ryan Taylor, King Kenny, and now Viruzz. And while his only win was against Ryan Taylor from that first round stoppage of the iconic headbutt, he does look much better in this open workout. He looks sharp, and he looks to have improved since his knockout loss to King Kenny. And Viruzz also looked pretty clean. He has nice straight punches and seems to move pretty well. His hooks kind of come out a little awkward and his elbows are flared. And while this was one of the hardest picks for me on this card, I see Viruzz just being able to outpoint DK Money, maybe landing a little bit more of the significant shots throughout the round, and just being a little bit more active to the point where he's able to get the win on the judges' scorecards. Might be a bit of a back and forth controversial one, but I see Viruzz getting the decision win in the end. And now we get into the big three. Salt Papi versus Anthony Taylor is next up. And this is set to be a 3-round war. A lot of controversy with the fact that it is 3 rounds. But nonetheless, it's definitely going to be an interesting fight. 2 of the highest level influencer boxers that we've seen to date. And I do see Anthony Taylor really coming forward and putting the pressure on Salt Papi, as that really is what he has to do. He has to be the more active fighter and in the eyes of the judges, score the more effective shots by just landing more. Even if he can't hurt Salt Papi, the more he makes it rough and rugged and makes the fight where Salt Papi isn't comfortable, which will be on the inside, the better chance that Anthony Taylor will have at winning this. Salt Papi is a counter puncher. He likes to stay on the back foot and pick his shots really well. He's picked up the sport quickly, and it's definitely going to be interesting to see this war with Anthony Taylor. Another really hard one to pick here. The experience goes to Anthony Taylor, but the skill set goes to Salt Papi, as I see Salt Papi on the back foot trying to catch Anthony Taylor coming forward and having success throughout the rounds with his slick movements, potentially even timing Anthony Taylor and putting him onto the canvas. But I don't think it will be a stoppage in this one. I think Salt Papi will go to the decision. A very even matchup on paper, but I'm going to be taking Salt Papi via a decision victory. And next up we have the co-main event, Deji versus Swarmz. Probably the most interesting lead up we've seen to a fight on this card, with the vibe of this one being really quiet but also powerful, with Deji coming in super focused, and this is really make or break for him. Deji's definitely looking to show out and put a statement here on Swarmz, which is really what he has to do to raise his stock even further in this scene and get bigger and better fights, such as a rematch with Alex Wasabi, and potentially climbing up the ranks to get to a top position in the scene. Swarmz has really impressed me coming into this fight. In the open workout, he looked clean. We really know what we're getting with Deji, but Swarmz a little bit more of an unknown figure. He fought Ryan Taylor and he made quick work with him, and we didn't really get to see much of his skill set just because of how that ended. A freak injury to the eye of Ryan Taylor, but Swarmz is coming in here focused. He's not playing any games. This isn't the Swarmz that we saw against KSI last year. This is a new improved version of him. He's taking his training super seriously. He's got into a phenomenal shape, and credit to him because he's looking focused and he wants to cause the upset in this one. But stylistically, I see Deji overwhelming him. Deji's a really slick boxer and he moves out of the way of shots really well, and I see him being able to counter Swarmz when Swarmz comes in and kind of leaves himself open, putting it onto Swarmz again and again to the point where he's able to get a stoppage victory in this one. And finally, we have KSI versus Joe Fournier, the main event, the one where everyone of course will be tuning in for. KSI stepping up and fighting a professional boxer in Joe Fournier with a 9-0 record. A big test on paper, but I don't see that telling the whole story. I think from the jump, as he always does, KSI will pour it onto Joe Fournier, just throwing big time shots, overhands, hooks, and just implement everything that he's done throughout this camp. We know KSI has the heart and we know he has that conditioning, but recently he's really been honing in on his skill set, such as his last fight against Face Temper, where he was able to put him out with a combination of a right hook to left hook, a quick karate blitz that was able to get Temper out of there. And I see KSI having the advantage in most ways in this fight. I don't think it will be out of his control that much. While Joe Fournier is a professional boxer, he hasn't really shown to be the most dangerous guy, and this is probably his toughest fight, which is saying something as a professional boxer. I think KSI will make relatively quick work of Joe, maybe dropping him a couple times before getting a TKO or a knockout. But regardless, I see this as a KSI stoppage win, which I did predict in my last video where I said this fight would not be close. So go check that video out for a more in-depth breakdown, as well as my other breakdowns on Salt Papi versus Anthony Taylor and Deji versus Swarmz. I go in depth into those fights, but let me know your predictions on this card in the comments down below, and I'll definitely be bringing you guys more content. So that's it for this breakdown, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and turn your notifications on.